Hello there. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so glad you're here. You have some things that happen sometimes when you're doing paranormal shows, and I used to think that was hooey. I don't think so right this minute, but when you have a guest of the caliber of tonight's, sometimes stuff happens. And I am fortunate because this is not my first time interviewing Janice Carlson. She is absolutely brilliant. She wrote the book Soul Sensing to help people who may not have her skill set to be able to connect with their loved ones. She is a psychic. She is an author. She's just a brilliant human. She's so nice. And she's my guest tonight. So, hello, Janice. How are you?
Hello, Kat. How are you?
I am doing great. I think my energy was getting a little off the chain because of all the power and weird issues I was having.
Yes.
I'm on my second laptop of the day, actually, not just the weekend.
Oh.
And then it's been exciting. But it is what it is. And I have learned that sometimes when I have someone who is going to be fantastic, hello, Tom McNicholas, that sometimes the gremlins show up. And that's actually the word that my friend had used was, oh, you've got gremlins. I don't necessarily get gremlins, but every so often, I guess it's, they like to come out and play. And when I start getting nervous, my energy goes off the chain. So that gets into it too. And I know that you're aware that that happens to people.
Yeah. Especially when they're talking to mediums.
Yes.
You get energy from other dimensions happening. And, I don't think your problem is as bad as mine. My problem has been that things catch on fire around me.
Oh.
So I'm not a fire starter per se. I don't plan on these things happening, but my dishwasher burst into flames about 2 weeks ago. So that's a good one example of that. And it's me and the element of fire. It just must be me and the element of fire. There's water and there's soil, there's earth, and there's wind, but for me it's fire. And I'm just very careful now. As soon as that happened, and I've had it happen with several appliances, I went right out and got one of those fire blankets that they sell. And a fire extinguisher, because I was just bellowing for my husband to come up from the basement and help me. And I don't know if he didn't understand. I should have been yelling fire, though. I realize now that instead of yelling, Brad, come up here, I should have been yelling fire for sure. And then he would have come running.
Well, and you don't anticipate these things.
No, you don't. And the only thing I could think of to do was to grab a long-handled spoon and hit the cancel button on the dishwasher.
Yes.
And that canceled, but it kept smoking and kind of flaming, and he finally had to cut the power to it. But so, see, you could be having those problems. You could be having things bursting into the flame in your office.
Take it.
Yeah.
But, I used to be all freaked out when stuff would happen. And because I've done one of my shows for 10 years and this one for right at 6. And it's so funny because I used to be so blown away by the technical issues that I would have.
Right.
And I'm like, well, let's see, what are we talking about?
Exactly.
We're talking about spirits. We're talking about interactive spirits. We're talking about haunted locations. Sometimes I go from haunted locations, go live from them, and it's not an unusual thing. Right now, I am in my cute little cottage down on the coast, and I have run away with my fellow ghost hunter, Lori Dorsey, and this is supposed to be just a really laid-back time. And it has been, except for my technical issues. So
yeah, right.
Never bought this many laptops in one fell swoop in my entire life. So
that's a big laptop budget if you've had to buy a couple of them lately.
Well, one of them's going back. 2 of them may be going back at this point.
Oh, yeah.
it's just, it probably really is. Normally, if I'm talking with a psychic, if I'm talking with someone who has mediumship gifts as well, and you're both,
Yes.
that can really pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to just try and stay calm. I think that machines, copiers and all sorts of things pick up on tense energy and then they start to jam. And
I think,
you have to try to stay as calm as you can when you're working with this stuff.
yeah. Well, it's funny because everything was working fine 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, of
And
course.
so I went to, because I've done all my tests and everything, and I went to go into the studio, and it was like, oh, let me see how many times I can spin. So it's just a thing. It's not the end of the world because I'm
No,
still talking to you, which I really enjoy.
same here. Yeah. And how has 2025 been treating you so far?
Outside of the electronics, pretty great.
Good.
I have
Excellent.
happy dogs, happy kids, happy husband,
Good.
happy. I'm a happy cat, so I can't really think of anything that's a negative.
Excellent.
I'm proud to be able to say that.
Yes. That's a lot of plates in the air. That's a lot of things to be keeping track of.
Well, but they're not as many as I used to.
Right.
And I don't have to stress quite as much.
Right.
When I was younger, trying to keep everything flowing, the energy was younger, the patience was less, and the stress was a lot more because I was doing that corporate thing,
Yes.
And I don't miss the corporate thing.
No, and kids and pets can be kind of unpredictable too. It's hard to know what they're going to throw at you too.
True. And better with the pets. It's not really, but that's what I have now.
Yeah.
Everybody's grown and having their, so it's really exciting. And hello to Marcus in chat too. But I think that one of the things that fascinates me about you, and always has, okay, is that you didn't just roll with your gifts and do what you do. You try to help other people be able to communicate as well.
Right. Yes.
And since we spoke, I've lost my mom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if I'd lost my dad the last time we spoke or not, but I've lost both my parents. And I was there as an active person caring in their death process.
Oh.
And I wasn't in charge with my dad. I was in charge with my mom, which I did not anticipate happening. It was a weird flux. But it was interesting because they would be talking to people, their family, and not know they were talking to them if I asked them about it.
Oh.
So I asked my dad once if he had been speaking to his dad, and he leaned up and he said, "Sweetheart, my dad is dead."
Oh.
I said, "Well, okay, who are you talking to then?"
Right.
But it was really an interesting time because he was so, I'm sorry, I have to shift and I'm having to hold this, and I apologize to everybody. I'm going to make seasick, but it was such an interesting thing because my dad grew up rurally. He was fortunate enough to be offered a scholarship to a Dale Carnegie school that was starting, and that opened a lot of doors for him. But he never came out of being the country person. His idea of a good time when stress was strong was to we had 33 and a third acres, and I would get to go and help move bricks from one side of that property to the other.
Wow.
And there were a lot of bricks. And I was just kind of like, well, why don't you let me steer since the truck's stuck, right? And you can push it because you're stronger. And he was like, well, you don't have a license. I'm like, we're in the woods. We are literally in the woods. And so do you know that those bricks are in my backyard as a patio now?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's such a gift to be able to have that,
Yes.
but it was so unexpected.
Yeah.
And, things happen weirdly. And I know that you're very aware of that because you deal with that.
Yes.
But for somebody like me, I have gifts, but I don't generally apply them in my home life so much.
Right.
Not like that. But they were just jumping into the fray. Does that happen?
What do you mean by jumping into the fray exactly?
It was just kind of like with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Was in COVID. She was in the hospital. They hadn't been feeding her. I got there and she just looked at me. She said, I love you. I'm like, I love you too. What is this?
Mm-hmm.
And it had been a long time since she had eaten, and it was detrimental.
Yes.
So, I was just kind of like, well, here we are. We're going to do the best we can with what we've got.
Right.
But everything that I have started just going off.
Okay.
I was hearing her parents. She wasn't, but I was hearing her parents. I was hearing people who weren't dead yet,
Mm-hmm.
but had, they were mentally incapacitated. But, it was really weird. And my mom had Alzheimer's, but it was nowhere near showing at that point in her life. She was as with it as you get.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, and I was just kind of like not knowing what to do because I knew what she didn't want to happen. And it was the one thing that had happened, and it was gone beyond fixing.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the person that was supposed to be her decision maker bailed.
Oh.
So, she had a lot of angst because she didn't want me to be in that position. I had a lot of angst because I didn't want her to be in that position.
Right.
So, when people are dealing with that, it's really surprising how much the person who's actively dying gets involved.
Yes.
And I didn't anticipate that. And I should have, knowing, what I know through our conversations and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's funny you should bring this up because there's a book I was going to recommend later on anyway that is really talks about how the dying see things that sometimes the rest of us don't see. In this case, you were seeing stuff she didn't see. But it's a book it's by David Kessler, Kessler, and it's called Vision Trips and Crowded Rooms, Who You See Before You Die.
right.
And it's a whole like collection of talking to hospice workers and mainly professionals like that, nurses, hospice workers, doctors who see death all the time and see the unusual stuff that comes around that. How the dying go into another dimension and can see people from the other side coming for them. And so a lot of it's written off by people as being, oh, it's the drugs they're on or whatever. Well, a lot of them aren't on drugs.
A lot of them aren't on drugs.
No. And so this is why the doctors and hospice workers helped to put this compilation of stories together, was because they knew it was not drug-induced stuff. It appears that you, as you're dying, you slip into another dimension and you begin seeing loved ones and, all sorts of, even people you don't know. And often I think they're your ancestors, that may even be dressed in kind of old fashioned costumes. So you can't quite figure out what you're seeing, but it's good to know that happens. So it doesn't scare you when you don't just blow the dying off when they, blow them off as being drugged or losing their minds or something. It's really actually happening to them,
I do.
Yep. And in your case, it was happening for you. You were sensitive enough to feel it happening.
Which was strange.
Mm-hmm. I'll bet it was.
Well, my stress, my worry, my stress was such at that time that I wasn't trusting it. And then I'm like, what? Of course that's happening. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But, the interesting thing to me was that a friend of mine was my dad's caregiver. When my dad needed someone pre-hospice, that's who I just reached out and said, I don't know what you're doing, but can you get someone, help me find someone? And she said, I'm on my way now. And
Oh,
so
good.
her name
Good.
is Tammy, and she is the most wonderful human. But anyway, she was there until my dad died while she was there, and I was asleep in the next room. And she came and grabbed me, and she was like, your dad just passed. He can hear you. Get up. I'm going to go get my stepmom. And so I got in there, and I was just like, Dad, I love you. I hope that you're okay with this journey. I don't even know how to tell you how much I'm going to miss you. And my stepmom came through, and I just got out of the way because
Mhm.
that was so much love. And
Yeah.
and I just, but the hospice people that had been taking care of him, working with Tammy, were very open about things. And
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate that Tammy is a professional caregiver, but she was also my friend, and she was like, you have this period, go.
Mm-hmm.
And and she told my stepmom that too.
Yeah.
But and excuse me, were you aware that that's documented, that the hearing stays for periods past the cognitive?
Yeah, people can kind of be in and out of body during that time. There are many people who can tell you what happened while they were on an operating table, what
Right.
was being said in other rooms in the hospital or in the waiting room of a hospital. So yeah, they seem to be able to get out of body and perceive things, like seeing that a relative is rushing into the hospital to try and get there in time to see them before they die. They'll often tell me that during sessions. The deceased loved ones will say, I could see he was trying so hard to get there in time. And I want you to tell him that I saw him struggling to get there. Because so many people really beat themselves up about that, about not getting there at time. And the thing is, doctors don't know when you're going to die. How are you supposed to know when this patient is going to die? And you're doing the best that you can to get there,
Yeah. And yet death is so emotional, and
yes, very.
but it's so natural.
It is very
now I know that. Now it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's awfully hard on the people we leave behind. And, that's why I do what I do, is because I've known that pain firsthand. I mean, as I've talked about before, I lost 2 parents by the time I was 10. I hate to see anybody in that kind of pain, and trying to help them continue to communicate with that loved one is really important to me. And most of the time we succeed.
Well, you're very good at it.
Thank you.
And when Soul Sensing is such a great book. I probably should get another one. Mine's dog-eared, but I try to share it with people too.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you go to all that effort? I mean, you could be just lecturing, you could be doing all the things that you also do, but that's a very personal book.
Yes. I think that it is very personal, but it's not completely autobiographical or anything. It's really a how-to book. People are usually pretty surprised at how much of a how-to book.
It is a surprise, but it is very.
Yeah. I mean,
we need that.
Yeah. And I've been blessed with some experiences too that have helped me even since I wrote the book, like dying during a colonoscopy. I was starting to die. They overdosed me on anesthetic. I saw my 2 dogs that had died just a few months beforehand, elderly dogs that we'd had to put down because they were suffering. And I saw them, I reached out to them, I could touch them, I could feel their warmth. And then I was just suddenly just grabbed and pulled back to this colonoscopy clinic. Which I got to tell you, everybody that writes about that kind of experience says what a bummer it is to get sucked back into your body. One woman described it as being pulled back into a pair of wet jeans, is kind of how it felt to her. And you know, I mean, you shouldn't feel that way about life, but it's just that the other side is so nice, that is such a pleasant experience, that it's hard to come back into your body. And then I heard the doctor talking to someone in the corner, and I realized in this darkened room that it was my husband, and that there were a lot of reasons to stay on Earth. There was a lot of work I still had to do. So yeah, I'm glad I had that experience, because now I can relate to other people who've had it. And I know I'm on the right track when I talk about life after death, because I've experienced it firsthand. Yeah. I mean, the fact that I can talk to the dead is one set of things. The fact that I've actually died and been brought back to life is another set of experiences that millions of people have every year.
It's amazing how many.
It's very valuable to have those experiences, you know. And as I said, I'm not the only one who can talk to the dead. There are lots and lots of mediums in there. Most of us have some ability to do it. If we learn how to tap into our own special ability. I was laughing earlier when I talked about the elements of fire and water and wind and so forth. But those are the elements that help our dead loved ones manifest themselves back to us on the earth. And you learn after a while that maybe your loved one always visits you in the shower, and it's because of the element of water. Yeah, or only in the car. And the car is, to me,
I get the car a lot.
An element of wind. You're moving very quickly through the element of wind. And if this is happening to you, then another way that your loved ones are going to communicate with you is by having wind chimes outside, or even in your house, and having or having like a helium balloon that you let loose, and often it'll go right to the room of somebody who's died in the house. So working with those elements too can aid you in talking to a loved one.
You know, it's interesting because both times when my parents died, two groups of friends that are my special soul groups, that's what I received, were wind chimes from both groups.
Yep.
And it was so perfect personally for me.
Yep.
And it was interesting also that that's what they perceived to be the perfect gift for me. The people who know me the best.
Yes. Yeah. And wind might be your element, or it could be the element of the loved ones who's communicating with you. My dad was an ace fighter pilot during World War II. He was a colonel in the Air Force, and wind and air is his element. I mean, that's when I'm going to encounter him, is in the car, or even this past early this fall, I was able to go to Duxford, England, where he flew from, where the American airmen were during World War II. So that's something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Just feeling those winds blowing on me, just looking up at the sky, at the eternity that sky represented for so many of our pilots who never came home again. They took off into the blue sky and they never returned. They were shot down. And so just having that experience was so amazing. It's just beyond description. I noticed you're wearing an Edinburgh t-shirt. I just had to laugh because we just got back from Edinburgh not too long ago. Yeah, we took this trip over to the British Isles. Yeah.
I absolutely love that city.
I know.
I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of weeks in Scotland this summer.
Oh, good.
And we went from pillar to post. It was brilliant.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you got the chance to do that. You have ancestry there.
Mm-hmm.
So do I. And so I bought this little guy. I'll show him to you.
Do.
You probably recognize these little guys, right?
Oh, yes.
What are they called? The shaggy cows or something?
They're coos.
From Edinburgh. Oh, gosh, they're so adorable. And I guess they're very friendly cows. They come up and visit with you.
I have them at gas stations along the highways.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So to me, that was the kind of neat thing to learn.
Yeah.
So when you were there, What was were you just there on holiday?
I was there for about 4 days in late September, I'd say.
Oh, what a great time.
Yeah. And I didn't expect it to be as cold as it was. And then my husband informed me that we were on the North Sea after all. And so already in September, they were wearing gloves and hats. I mean, it was cold.
It was cold. I mean, I was there in the summertime both times.
Okay.
And I was freezing.
Oh,
I was, you know,
you're used to some real heat, aren't you?
I am used to real heat. I'm in Alabama. But you know, the funny thing is that when we stayed in some dorms in St. Andrews for a few nights.
Right.
That is right on the North Sea. That's the beach where Chariots of Fire was filmed.
Oof.
And so if I get around water, I'm getting in somehow. So I unlaced my shoes and went running across the beach and got in the North Sea. And then when we went to Loch Ness, I did the same thing, but that was a lot colder because that was in the Highlands.
Yeah.
And that's the deepest lake, period.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But it was
sure. But I always tell people, get in touch with your roots and get in touch with your magic. The people you are descendant from had their own shamans, had their own, as a religion, they had their own magic, their own ways in herbs, healing, just all of that. All of that is important to get back in touch with. So we're talking in your case and mine, a Gaelic background. Which is very heavily dependent on the elements of wind and fire and
absolutely
and that kind of stuff.
Do you know, I do not have mediumship abilities that I'm aware of, but I had 2 different incidents while I was over there of a spirit showing me a physical manifestation of what killed them.
Okay.
And that hurt.
Okay.
And that was real.
You could feel it in your body.
Yes. One of them fell and struck his head on a marble staircase, and I didn't know that there was anyone there who had died. I actually asked someone if someone died from a head injury, and they said, "Oh, well, yes, and his paperwork is right in that room behind you."
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And then when I was on the Culloden battlefield, I got gut shot.
Okay.
It was like something just went right through me, right under my solar plexus.
Yep.
And I was like, I had to leave. I could not make it lighten up.
Yeah, battlefields are particularly perilous for those of us with some medium's abilities and things. I mean, you can have things happen on a battlefield centuries later because it was so deadly there.
Well, they had so many people die on Culloden, and there were all the Jacobites. The English had guns, and they didn't, and they were told to charge by the Irishmen. I mean, I wouldn't have listened to that. But that's
me either. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's amazing. But I hear it a lot about battlefields. I always warn people, when you go to Gettysburg, just be careful out there. You know what I mean? Because most of us are dressed in blue for openers, navy blue. We're in blue jeans and a blue sweatshirt or whatever. What do you think the people in that time are going to make of that?
Yes.
You know, and I saw it happen to my husband. He was nearly killed on a battlefield in Gettysburg where a limb fell out of a tree and nearly killed him. And we found out later that we were walking on graves that had been paved over to make a parking lot for an inn.
That makes me crazy.
That's so disrespectful, and we didn't know what was buried underneath us, but things can happen. There's no question.
I have not had that physical experience like I had there at Gettysburg, but my very first time in Gettysburg, the first night, I had gone to investigate and wander around with some friends, and I saw what I thought were a stand of trees, and when I looked back, there were no trees there.
Wow.
They were people that had, but I kept seeing what I thought were bunnies popping up, because fields, and there were no bunnies when I shined a light. And the people I was with that lived there said, those are sentries. They're scouts.
Okay.
They're seeing what we're doing.
Sure.
And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
They're still working.
Yes. Well, you slip into their time, they can slip into yours as well. Time is a lot more malleable than we know about. And yet, although science is, I'm a big fan of Skinwalker Ranch. I love that they're checking
I like it too.
dimensions. That they're doing it with scientific equipment and people with PhDs in physics and things. I mean, I think that's really amazing what they're doing there.
Well, we have a comment, and I'm going to have to grab my specs. I know that I'm probably going to be making people nauseous with all this wiggling. I apologize. It's all I can do. In my research and lineage, the elements are personifications of the elemental plane, and among other things, they could be used as a communication medium. People seem to have a sympathetic resonance to one elemental more than another. If you resonate with fire more so than water, then you'll experience left fleshies at times, especially with electronics. And I can so relate to that, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Today has been that day.
Yes.
But I am a water person.
Okay. Okay.
And, I mean, it's my thing. So I do want to say, now that I have glasses on, say hello to Bridget Connolly, who has also joined us in chat, in April. I am so blessed to be able to interact with different elements. And is that a normal thing? Because I know people that feel like they're so locked in, and I'm finding the older I get, the less locked in I seem to be.
I think we grow as we get older. I mean, I think that our brain continues to create pathways, and I just think we create more sensitivities to other things, especially if you're a quick learner and you kind of get bored with one way of doing things. I think that's progressive for your brain to be doing that, especially as you get older. Like my husband just had shoulder surgery, so now he's forced to use his left hand for everything. That's really good for your brain.
It is.
It is. And so whenever you start to find that another element it's expanding who you are, we continue to expand into the next life. And I wonder sometimes about dreams about houses and rooms. Have you had those too?
Periodically, it's a different house. Or sometimes it's my grandmother's house.
Okay.
But I don't do it as much as I used to.
Okay.
But
if you go into a house that you're familiar with in a dream, and then you suddenly discover rooms that you didn't know were there, suddenly you discover a little theater with, a big screen and all sorts of stuff, and you discover an indoor pool or a library or something that wasn't there before. That's about unleashed potential. It's about untapped potential for you.
Okay.
And I think it's good when people continue to have those dreams, because it means they're expanding. It's also, too, can be dead loved ones showing you where they live in heaven, trying to show you the lay of the land.
The library would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be my grandma's dream.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to stop growing. We don't want to stop learning, and any kind of my little kerfluffles with fire, I don't want them to interrupt my ability to work with other elements like water and clay and earth and things like that. Yeah.
What do you do? What is indicative of earth being your element?
Gardening, an interest in gardening. Also, the dead tend to communicate with us in graveyards, where digging in earth is a very big issue, as are ashes, burying the ashes of a loved one. And working with clay is another way to attract spirits to you that can relate to that. So I get a lot of people who tell me they've been visited in their gardens. Well, and after all, it's generally a quiet place. And you'll find that butterflies and other creatures that ordinarily would have nothing to do with you will come even and land on you.
Or humming.
Hummingbirds, cardinals,
I had a
things like that.
I had a hummingbird land on me.
Okay, there you
That
go.
was,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, and
Was
that's it's
It
again
was
you're
weird.
communing with the dead, and so they channel through lower life forms like that to stop by and say hello. I'm watching. I know what's going on with you. I'm guarding you. That kind of thing.
My son thought it was hilarious because he was like, "This is like freaking Disney World up in here, Mom. This is getting weird." And I was, well, okay.
Yeah.
It is getting weird, but how cool is this, right? This is a really great thing that just happened because
Oh,
there
yes.
were butterflies landing, but I just put that down to my toes being done, right?
Right.
But they do interact. And my birds, and I just recently started feeding birds a few years ago, and it's so bizarre because they know who you are. They know what time they want to eat.
Yes. Yes.
They're creatures of habit.
Yes. Oh, and even the wild birds around you, I've read about birds at length.
They
and
are. They're wild.
the wild birds around you know the faces of the people in your household. So they tend to squawk more if a stranger is coming up to the door.
Okay.
They acquaint themselves with anybody that's going to come in and out of your house on a regular basis, and they are less afraid of you because of that.
They talk. I mean, they'll do calls.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that for 2 years has. If I come outside, he starts whistling, and it's a distinctive whistle, and I whistle back. And we've done that for a while now.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. So it's definitely different.
Yes.
I would not have thought that a wild bird would celebrate when I walked out the door.
Well, but they tend to nest in the same areas a lot of times. And so their generations of them get to know you and your house. And I think it's sweet. I mean, it's kind of guarding behavior that they will squawk at a UPS guy or somebody else coming to the door. I always call our dog the white plague because she comes running out, wanting to go after squirrels and things like that. And they hate her,
Yeah. Well, I'm down to 2 dogs now, and they're both fairly new. So the birds are kind of used to one, wondering about the other one. But I wanted to share. We have a post by Bridget.
Yeah, I see that.
And I'm going to share it in case people are just listening and can't see. I needed this topic tonight. My husband passed away this past Wednesday. He's being cremated this week.
Oh.
He was a Navy corpsman attached to the Marines in Vietnam. And Bridget, I don't have the words for how sorry I am for your loss. I'm so sorry. But I'm so glad that y'all had each other. And I know that he'll still be with you. And it's just so difficult.
I do a free session for anyone who's lost a vet. So if Bridget wants to visit my website, janicecarlson.com, and have me read for her, give her a half-hour reading or something at some point, she's welcome to do that. My dad was in the Air Force, so I offer a free reading to anybody whose loved one was in the Air Force or Army or Navy or whatever.
Well,
also firemen and
branches. Yeah. My dad was a Green Beret.
Oh, was he?
In Vietnam. Yeah, he didn't get deployed. He was transferred like a week before his unit deployed. And my godfather died because he was not transferred.
Okay.
But it was just like, I think probably my dad dealt with a lot of different stuff from that. I think that anyone would. But again, Bridget, I'm so glad that he hasn't left you. And she's going to reach out to you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, because some people have to wait a long time before they can get a reading. Others want one right away. So I always try to make sure they know about it anyway.
Right.
And then when they're ready, they can contact me. Absolutely.
Well, that's one of the things that, I get so amazed by what you do anyway. But primarily, you have a money back guarantee for your readings.
I do.
I don't know anyone else who does that.
I know. I'm so stunned because mediumship has had a long history of chicanery,
Yeah,
like around the turn of the century, especially the physical mediums were always trying to make sure that a table levitated or a clock stopped or something funky happened physically during a reading. And so they began staging that junk. And I'm a mental medium, which is a different thing, but that really gave the field a black eye. Having people who were, what they were doing is restaging something that had actually happened during a reading, but you can't, that's, you just don't want to get into that kind of prop magic junk with a reader. So what I do is either I'm getting your loved one or I'm not, and we're going to know it in the first few minutes because they're going to tell me maybe how they died, or they'll tell me what they looked like, and we begin to figure out that we're actually talking to who you want to talk to. And that's the kind of the acid test that I do in the first few minutes to make sure I'm getting them on the line, and then we can go forward with
right.
the reading. And about 1 in 30 people, I just can't read for. Maybe someone else could. That's not to say they can't be read for. It just that my connection with that person is probably not working for some reason.
Right. So. Well, that happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people are so bereft that I have to have them call me back in a few months when things have tamped down a little for them.
Yeah.
But basically, most of the time it works. And when I started doing mediumship, I did a prayer. I said, please don't ever let me take this for granted, that the magic of this. Let me always appreciate how amazing it is to talk to people on the other side. And, you don't ever want it to turn into a car wash situation where you're taking so many clients on and you know what I mean? And then you're no longer, you're a robot. And I'm seeing that happening a lot in healthcare. We've got some tremendous people in healthcare, but they're so overworked that they can't be loving anymore. They're robotic in their behavior. Yeah. Now we were just in a waiting room and with my husband had some complications after surgery a couple days ago. And we waited 3 to 4 hours for ER care. And that's happening all over this country.
It is.
And by the year 2036, we're going to have a shortage of at least 30,000 doctors.
Yeah.
It's
we're an aging population too.
We're aging, absolutely.
And so it's difficult to keep up with the volume of deteriorating bodies.
Yes. And what's an emergency and what's not, they have to sort that out. Thank God I told him I thought he was having an allergic reaction to anesthetic. So they put us in triage within the first 15 minutes. But then you go, if they don't think you're dying on your EKG, then they put you back in the waiting room and you sit there with other sick people for 3 to 4 hours. And this is happening all over the country. Everywhere. And part of the doctor shortage, frankly, and I shouldn't get too political here, but is that we are not in America providing any kind of help for our doctors' medical training. In other words, there are no loans. It's hard to get loans for it. Remember, there are other countries that actually pay doctors to go to school.
Yes, there are.
And they're exporting them to us, which is why you often find that your doctor is not American born. But we really need to take this doctor and nurse shortage seriously, Well,
I know that two of the people that I travel with are healthcare professionals. One of them's a cath lab nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And they work in a travel capacity.
Okay.
They work as contractors. And that way they can see different places. They're so good at what they do.
Yes.
But, it's astounding to me that hospitals are willing to pay for subcontractors instead of regular full-time personnel.
Right.
And not taking anything away, because if you're going to pay me, I'm going to do it. I mean, seriously, that's how that works.
Yep.
But I just find it odd that that's the way that most hospitals seem to choose to do their business.
Yeah. It is.
And I think it's tragic.
It really is.
So,
It really is.
but that is where we are right now as a society. We're kind of a quick fix, and I'm not claiming that these are the best people I know. They are two of the best people I've ever known, and they do a good job. They are brilliant.
Yeah. But after hour 10 on a shift, you are going to start to lose some cognitive abilities. Yes. And many of the new doctors want a work-life balance. They say, when I'm done with my shift, I'm not staying for another one. I'm going. So, and that's good too, because you're getting better care if they're not complete zombies by the end of the shift.
That in residency. I mean,
right.
It's hard to become that person.
Yeah.
And, and I do understand you put them in the trenches and the stress to teach them to be better at thinking on their feet, better at dealing in a situation. And I do understand a good bit of that. But, when you get to a certain point, you need to be able to do your job.
Yes.
And, it just is the way that goes. And I've always, my cousin is a surgeon, and he's run different hospitals, and, he's administration, but he loves surgery. And he knew he was going to be a surgeon when he was 7. He really did. And he never wavered from that. So you do have people that have a calling, and that's what they're supposed to do. I believe it is with my friends too.
Yeah.
But it's a hard way to make a living if you don't hit, the lottery, basically.
Well, it really is. And when you consider that by the time they become doctors, they're already $500,000 into this thing.
Easily.
Okay? $250,000 for undergraduate, $250,000 for med school. If you went out just as a regular schmo and bought a Wendy's franchise for $500,000 and you didn't like doing that business in the end, you could sell your franchise. These guys are already committed for that kind of money. And what if they get into practice and they don't like the practice? They don't like the rigors of it and that kind of thing. So it's really a lot to ask of somebody, and our government should be doing more.
I agree.
To encourage Americans to become doctors.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother soapbox I'm getting on that.
It's so cutthroat. It is a soapbox. I mean, it's my feet too. I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is it's a lottery.
Yes,
absolutely. Are you going to be able to get in? Are you going to be able to get through? If you're in the wrong percentile as far as your GPA, you might as well just go home. I mean, it gets to where it's so difficult.
Yes.
Nursing is hard too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a hard profession to get into.
Absolutely. Bless them.
Thank
God bless them.
I'm not that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you think about? Should we talk about the coming year?
Well, since that's part of what we were going to be doing, I love that you do this.
Thanks.
I love it because to me, A, I get to talk to you, but B, you're the only person that I know whose predictions I'm like, let's put that on my show.
Okay.
I like you. I like what you do. I'm so respectful of your abilities, and I love that you're so really good at it.
Thank you. I have to confess, this year was a little hard for me because it's the year of the snake. Okay. And, I do the Chinese animals, which is why we're doing this so late in January, is because part of what I use is the Chinese animal of the year as to do my predictions. So you remember the year of the rat, I said there we were likely to have a pandemic that year because because rats carry disease.
Yeah.
And there it was in 2019, the COVID pandemic. So I thought, my God, what horrors am I going to run across with the snake?
I hope it's not that bad.
But it's not. No,
Yay.
thank heavens it didn't turn out as badly as I thought it would. But you know, it's going to have its ups and downs, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. But even with my newsletter that I do to my clients, I thought, I can't put a real snake picture on this. I don't want to creep people out. So I put little snake cookies. There were little snake cookies with frosting on them as my
I wouldn't even
visual.
touch those. I have
Yeah.
a phobia about snakes.
Nobody wants to look at the real thing, probably. So that's what I did. I thought either we're going to have to go to a cartoon this year, or we're going to have to do baked goods, because I don't want actual snakes on my newsletter, you know. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm so freaked out because really up where we are in Minnesota, all we've got are the little garter snakes. But
I'm in Alabama, and
they're real
everything that will
serious
kill
snakes.
you.
Those are serious snakes down there.
They are serious. We have copperheads and diamondbacks, and we
Oh,
have,
yeah.
no,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't like snakes at all.
But you know, only 25% of all varieties of snakes are poisonous.
And not in my book.
Well, I mean, if you don't know, of course, you don't want to get too close. But
well, I live
most are not. Most snakes are not poisonous.
I live by if it's slithering, it's deadly.
Oh,
because I don't
get out of the way, you know.
So I'm just better safe than sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to find out later that you were wrong about that. Yeah.
That would be a bad thing to make a mistake on.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is that you can die later. The problem is that when you, when they pump all this anti-venom into you, it saves your life at the time. Mm-hmm. And then because it suppresses your immune system so much, because it's one of the prednisone types of drugs, it can kill you later.
Yes.
So 3 years later, you can come down with very massive cancer as a result of all the anti-venom they had to shoot into you. So the snake kills you later anyway, a lot of times.
That would not
to be
because snakes are like that.
Yeah. I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I know.
Yeah, my husband had a cousin who was bitten by just a baby one, but the baby ones don't know how to regulate. It was by a baby rattlesnake in Texas, and they don't know how to regulate their venom. And so they can be the most deadly ones of all.
One of my daughter's ex-beaux, when they were younger, was cleaning my yard and got bit right above his boot, but didn't know it. So, yeah, that was ugly.
Yeah, I'll bet it was.
And it was a baby.
Oh no. Oh, yeah. No. Oh, yikes. Well, you don't have much time. You have to get airlifted out a lot of times and get some help, you know. You know, I always start out by talking about, and tell me when you need to take a break or whatever, but I always talk about what I predicted the year before that came true. I did say that we'd have continued job growth in 2024 and better wages and inflation, but I did say that inflation would still be alive and well, and it was in 2024. Unfortunately, in the hospitality industries and stuff, if Trump does the deportations that he's talking about, it's going to get more expensive in the hospitality workers being gone, having left the country. You're going to have to get Americans to be willing to do that work.
Right.
So eating out at restaurants and all of that is going to get even more expensive than it is. And it's really expensive right now.
It is really expensive right now.
And I'm hearing reports of a lot of workers, farm workers, not showing up because they're afraid they're going to be deported if they show up to work. So crops are going to be rotting on the vine. And whenever you make bold, sweeping moves, you're going to see a downside from that.
Yep. Either way. I mean, you have it if you just let the status quo roll. And if you start trying to make extreme changes too fast, it's really dangerous.
Mm-hmm. So you will see the cost of housing and everything go up in the next 4 years because of that. Because those are your roofers, those are a lot of your construction workers, and it's just something to be aware of. On the other hand, can you let illegal immigrants overrun your country? Is that smart? That's not smart either.
You have to find a balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. I also mentioned that the election would be very close, and it was terribly, terribly close. Um, this is, let's see what else we talked about last year. Um, we were talking about, I was predicting that the year of the dragon has the ability to take what are considered local conflicts and make them global. And we certainly saw that in the Middle
We
East.
sure did, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, suddenly we've got Syria and Iran and other countries being drawn into this conflict. Now, I haven't paid much attention to that because I'm so tired of the Middle Eastern conflicts that I have a tendency to tune that out. And I wonder if other Americans are feeling that kind of Middle East fatigue.
I feel like they did until the hostages were taken.
Yeah.
I feel like the October 7th was a deal breaker.
Yes.
For any sympathy that people had outside of the Middle East for the people that made that choice.
Yeah.
But I
well, I
it's
think
such a hard thing.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a hopelessness that can take place, that you start to feel that this is just never, ever, ever going to get resolved.
Well, I think that, it's easy for us in our position
Mm-hmm.
to experience that because we're not really under an existential threat.
Right.
And we really, as Americans, we've really never been. We have always been, we fought our wars on other people's soil. We have sent our warriors to defend other countries.
Yes.
But when we were actually fighting, we have not had to deal with what that reality is.
No.
So I think that we don't really understand where other people are coming from. We don't have somebody that's coming over our border to, do that to us
Right.
per se.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
What do you think? I mean, do you think that we are just cold to that because of that?
Well, I think it's the hopelessness of it. The fact that we have peace accords, we have one going now, even with the release of hostages and stuff like that. But you're always kind of waiting for the next bomb to drop somehow.
We are.
Yeah, it just has a kind of a sinkhole feeling that maybe we were getting certainly in Afghanistan too, that we were just kind of ready to get out of there after 20 years of that.
We could have done that better.
Oh, yeah. From beginning
that was hideous.
to end, that was a mess. Absolutely. So I also mentioned the fact, of course, that we were going to have hurricanes and wildfires, and
I would have liked that one to be wrong.
Absolutely. And it doesn't take any kind of Harvard genius to predict that either, but because it is just the trend now in our weather patterns and what's going on. But during the year of 2024, 8,851,000 acres of forest was burned in the United States alone. We're not even talking about Canada.
Yeah.
That's just off the charts. And with hurricanes, I don't know that we had so many of them. It was just that Hurricane Helene in North Carolina.
I was going to ask you about that because, Phyllis actually was affected by that.
Was she? Sure. She's
yes. She's in. Yes. And, the gentleman that does our internet things, his ancestral home washed away. It's gone.
Yeah.
And there's still people living in tents in sub-zero weather. Well, not, but sub-freezing temperatures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
But,
did you have any?
those
That's
of
such
us
a
in the
weird story.
north don't think of you as having cold winters, and but the truth of the matter is that you, well, certainly New Orleans has had more snow than Minnesota this year.
This week.
Minnesota, yes,
This week. Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
I don't know if
When I
I
got
don't think
here,
we've had 6 inches of snow, and they're down there having a foot or more. That's
yeah,
crazy. Missouri
it is
too.
insane.
Yeah, your producer told me Missouri had 15 inches of snow, and I'm
Hmm.
just thinking to myself, it's okay when
Yes.
it happens up here because we've got the equipment to deal with it. We are programmed to
Yes.
deal with it. Everybody's got a snow blower in their garage, and we have the clothing and everything we need to deal with it. It lays us up for about a day, if that, and then we're all back to work and stuff. But when it happens down where you guys are, it's an absolute mess.
I got here and, I drove Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, Friday. Anyway, when I got here, there was snow on the ground all the way down. When I got here, I had 4 inches of snow on my deck.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, I don't even have a broom strong enough to sweep that off my deck.
No.
So it was, and I learned how heavy snow is on
Mm-hmm.
both
Oh,
days,
yes. Oh,
but
yes.
trying to get rid of it. But it was the most bizarre thing. I mean, they were playing ice hockey in New Orleans
Wild.
and ice skating down, Bourbon Street. It was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do. We get foolish when we get that because we
You
don't
may
know
as
what
well
to do with
enjoy
it.
it,
Yeah,
I
might as
mean,
well.
you're stuck with it. It would
And
cost you a
Denise
lot of
cried
money to
more.
fly to Colorado and play in the snow, so you may as well
Well,
enjoy it when it's in your
I
backyard.
would never do that. My sister and my daughter both lived in Denver and Boulder, and I was like, no, I'm
Nope.
good. Thank you, though. I
Mm-mm.
did go, but I am also the only person I know who it was 0 when I landed in Denver, and 3 days later in Boulder, the snow was melting
Yes. Yeah.
because I take the weather with me when I go.
Oh, do you? Okay,
I
so
do. It always
that's one of
follows
your
me.
elements is the element
It is.
of weather. Um, they always talked about the Queen's weather during Queen Elizabeth II's reign because it just
Yeah.
invariably rained whenever she wanted to do
Yeah.
something, it seemed like. Um, I talked about significant discoveries in deep sea
Yeah.
situations, and they found the largest single coral reef. It's larger than a blue whale,
Yeah.
right off the coast of South America. I had a picture here I wanted to show you of some
Please
of the
do.
new life that they've discovered this year in the ocean.
Isn't that so cool?
Isn't it? Look at this guy on the right, the upper left, I guess would be.
Yes, I like him. He
Anyway,
looks like a nasty spider, but he's
he's a
cool.
toad. He's a toad, and he has hands for feet. He has what look like human hands for feet. They
How
discovered
cool is
all of
he?
these animals off the coast of, I think it was Peru or something this
Yeah.
past year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of I guess the point is there's a lot of stuff in the ocean we don't know
So
anything
much.
about that we haven't discovered. But I thought that was really cool. I didn't
I
realize
think it is too. And that was really well done.
Yeah,
Good job.
thanks. And then let's see. Remember, we had the Chariot, the Hermit, and the Death
Mm-hmm.
card as the final cards for the year.
Yes.
And the Death card was the death of at least half of the American voters who didn't win this race. And well, the Death card means death, but not physical death. Usually,
Mm-hmm.
in a spread, it means that probably whatever happened will again rise from the ashes. It's not the end of the story. But I just thought it
Right.
was interesting that we had those 3 higher arcana cards come up at the
Mm-hmm.
very end of that year. It was very significant. And you could feel people kind of holding their breath before that
Yes.
election because they knew it was going to be very close. Now, the reason why we do this so late in January together is because often the Chinese New Year doesn't begin until late January. And so we
Yeah.
have the year of the wood snake beginning on January 29th in 3 days. So a lot of what I'll be talking about is what will start happening in about 3 days.
Okay.
So I want people to know that their ability to do reconnaissance work is going to flourish. You're going to see people checking out situations before they venture into them this year.
Well, that'll be refreshing.
Yes, yeah. And expect your intuition to be heightened, and you can there will be qualities of the snake in your abilities and in others. You will be able to kind of leap forward to some things and then quickly retreat. And you may be able to lie in wait and kind of go mainly undetected, which is interesting in a political.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. Yeah. You may also feel a strong desire to climb this year, the way that snakes slither up trees. This could mean
That's
that,
very strange.
yes.
And I'm gonna tell you why.
Oh,
Because I have been being so pulled to start hiking.
okay.
I mean, really hiking. And I can't find anybody to do it with me yet. I'm working on it though.
Okay.
But that struck me when you said that. That's interesting to me.
Well, I think many of us will gravitate to mountains and to
Mhm.
hills.
Yeah.
And also, you may move into a towering apartment or even do kind of a more figurative climb in your career, but it is a year for climbing. Also, the element of wood in this year of the wood snake points to personal growth and flowering creative
Cool.
abilities. So people may find that even though they don't have time for this, they will suddenly take time to
Right.
do artwork and crafts and engage in creative activities. And this is a kind of spontaneity, impulsive stuff that is a very nice little I would say it's sort of a stress relieving sort of valve for
I
people.
like it.
Yeah, yeah. So if you suddenly feel the urge to start drawing cherry blossoms or painting or doing something, don't be surprised. Expect to not to see your way through this year so much as to feel your way through it. That's again that sixth sense that people will be having and developing more. Snakes are deaf, and so they
Yes.
have to use other senses, feeling heat, um, seeing, of course, and feeling tactily. And so all of that's going to be, we're going to see some of those qualities in ourselves. And this will kind of help you to trust your gut enough to go for some of your deepest wishes. This may be a year when you do some of your most ambitious stuff.
Wow.
Kind of out of the blue. You may just suddenly decide, I'm going to give this a whirl. But it's also a year to remember that snakes they don't do very well when it's cold. They,
That I
you know,
relate to.
and so it's a year to remember that you want to gravitate towards warmth and loving energy. You want to be careful that you don't, you're not left out in the cold, and that you're not leaving loved ones and other people out in the cold by simply forgetting about them or not mending relationships that have been damaged. But it's very important in snake years not to leave people out in the cold. If you know someone's going through something that's pretty heavy, stay in touch as much as you can. And I think we have to talk too about the practice of hygge. I know I've told you about hygge, haven't I? That
Yeah.
it's spelled
But we have new
H-Y-G-G.
listeners too, so
Yeah. Okay. It's the practice of hygge is coziness. It's about warmth. So if you have a house that's never had a fireplace, it might be a time to think about doing that.
I went and got mine cleaned and made sure everything was perfect with it because of this, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Last year.
Okay. Yep. That
Yeah.
element of fire. And the other quality that we see with snakes is that they shed their skin. And
Yeah.
this can be quite cathartic for most of us. You may be surprised to come out of 2025 kind of a new person in some ways. When you shed your skin as a snake, you do it because you're feeling confined in that skin, like you're outgrowing it.
Mhm.
So it's a year where you're going to get to get out of confining situations, whether it's a relationship that seems to be smothering you or a job that's kind of crushing you or whatever. This
Right.
is a year for that kind of transformation. And you're going to get the other reason why they shed their skin is because they get parasites on them. And so this is also a year where we
Okay.
would see us getting rid of some pesky health issues, getting rid of allergies and things like that.
Right.
Allergies to food, rashes, things like that. All of that may come to the fore in regard to living healthier.
Hmm.
Like my husband and I have just gone on the Mediterranean diet. It's not really a diet, it's a food plan. And I don't think of it as something that's depriving me. I think of it as something that's adding to my
Well,
diet.
sure.
Spices, herbs that we don't generally in the American diet use. Um, it's I didn't have much hope that I'd be very good at it because I'm not nuts about most vegetables and stuff, but it's really forcing me to discover that I like cilantro, that I like dill, that I can take the time to put oregano in a meatloaf, even if it's just your regular
Yes.
cooking, but that you're adding spices and things. It's definitely a diet that, promises to help prevent cancer and heart disease and
Yes.
diabetes and all sorts of things. So it's something to certainly consider and give it a run, give it a try. Because they don't use as much sugar, they don't use butter as much, they use olive oil to cook, but it's just amazing how
And the
good.
flavors come together beautifully.
Yes, they do.
I like those.
Absolutely.
I like those seasonings.
So I thought, like that book, Julie and Julia, or the movie Julie and Julia, what I would do is cook my way through a
I love it.
Mediterranean cookbook and then post about it on Facebook and people are like, oh, that quiche looks amazing, and that kind of
I
thing.
love
So,
that.
but the Mediterranean's a really big place. You've got Italy and influences from Spain and influences from southern France and
Hmm.
all sorts of countries around the Mediterranean. So if
Yes.
you don't like one recipe, you can move on to something else, you know.
And
Um,
but you're still taking those chances. I love that.
yes.
You're doing something different, but you're doing it for you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I won't always turn to sugar and butter when I want something sweet in the house. Instead, I think we just had an strawberry oatmeal bake that looks a little like a crisp, but the only thing sweetening it is about a
Oh,
quarter of a cup of maple syrup. So you're not getting all that sugar and butter and yet you're still getting a nice fruity dessert, you
have you
know?
found dates yet?
No, I haven't discovered dates yet. That's coming up, I
It's
think.
it's something that a friend of mine fixed for me when I was visiting them, and they're they're very sweet, very chewy,
Mm-hmm.
but you can blend them with stronger flavors,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just wonderful.
Oh
So
yeah.
you're going to have fun when you get to that.
Oh, absolutely.
I was
Absolutely.
a little hesitant,
Well, yeah. If you're not used to a
but
food, you got to kind of ease
yes.
into it, right?
Yeah, and you just have to be open to the possibilities.
Right.
And like I said, this was prepared for me, so I didn't really have a opinion going in.
Right.
But oh my word, you're going to love them when you get there.
Yes. And the other thing is that this is a diet that really helps, or a food plan that really helps with arthritis pain. So instead
Yes,
of
big
taking
deal.
all these pills all the time, you're better off trying some foods that'll fight that. And I'm noticing even in 1 week that that's subsiding a lot of that pain.
Really?
Um, yeah, and the other thing is just a glass of water. Water really helps arthritis. And whoever tells you that? Nobody tells you that. You just
Well,
have to
we're
kind
not a
of study.
holistic
We're
community.
not a holistic community, and that's I think what Robert Kennedy Jr. and others are trying to say
Yes.
to us is we shouldn't just have a mentality of cut and drug with our
Yep.
doctors. It shouldn't just be surgery or drugs. There are other alternatives that you should try first.
Well, and just getting healthier overall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just help yourself to help yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And let your body have good fuel, good food.
Mhm.
Now, the Chinese believe that the year of the snake symbolizes transformation, wisdom, and adaptability. And you can see in all these ways that it does. I think we're going to get better at dealing with emergencies. We saw that in LA, that if you're told to leave for a wildfire, go.
Yes.
Have your go bag and be ready to go, because they're really not going to warn you unless they're pretty sure you're in trouble. And it's just senseless to stay and die.
Well,
It
it
seems,
is.
yeah. And so we're going to get better at, I think, responding to emergency situations. Now in Minnesota, most of us wouldn't have a go bag because you I don't know why you'd have anything. You don't have hurricanes. You have the occasional tornado. But what we do have is stuff in our cars to make sure you don't freeze to death on the road. You're going to find shovels in the back of our cars. You're going to find extra blankets. You may find high calorie snacks for when you get stuck in the snow and nobody can get to
Okay.
you. So where it is that you live, you want a sense of preparedness, because the truth is the government can't help everybody in a situation.
That's true. Even no matter how much you
No
wish that
matter
they
how much
could.
they can try. If we're sitting in our waiting rooms for the ER care for 3 to 4 hours, how do you think that somebody's going to come and rescue you
Yeah.
in some of these situations? So if they're warning you, get out and be prepared to get out. I'm also going to say that I think that this is a year when we need to slow down with our eating behaviors in regard to savoring food more and savoring snacks, and not gulping food or gulping beverages, because it's a year when you're more likely to choke. And
Okay.
so
Is that relevant
also,
to a snake also?
that's related to the snake also. It
Okay.
just, choking is more likely to happen in the next 12 months because, well, if we savored our food, of course, we'd probably eat a lot less in this country. Sometimes I watch my husband, he's kind of like a wood chipper going through snacks. And it's like, are you
Yeah.
even tasting that? Are you tasting that? Or is it just kind of going down, If you
Hmm.
if you kind of take the time to savor a snack, um, don't eat like your dog. Your dog just sucks things up like a line of cocaine.
Inhales it.
They just
Yes.
inhale it. They don't
Yeah.
enjoy it. It seems like they just swallow it. And so that's why I'm saying that people need to kind of slow down with that. We might also have more of a tendency to claustrophobia this year. So if you are not, sometimes we're on flights and we think we've got air sickness. And in fact, what we've got is claustrophobia, because these
Kind of a
flights,
panic episode.
yeah, panic episodes that
Okay.
then cause you to get nauseous. I had it happen on the way home from England. And so it might be worth it in some situations to think about flying first class.
Hmm.
If you really cannot I can't handle those tight situations. And I'm learning that about myself. And it will manifest itself a lot of times in nausea. So you'll
Well,
think
sure. Stress does that.
you'll think that you are air sick, but that's not actually necessarily what's going on.
Right.
This is a year that favors taking road trips over flying. It also, you'll be more prone to take the road less traveled by, so
Hmm.
you can avoid poor road conditions and avoid crowds. It will be a year when people are not wild about being in crowds, and I'm not quite
I
sure
could see
why.
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but they probably want a little more space, a little room to move. And also give yourself permission to avoid confrontations in your personal life this year, until such time as you're feeling emotionally ready to do that. In the year of
Okay.
the dragon, the concern was that if you had to confront somebody, that you'd have to do it very tactfully, so it didn't become a situation where you're both throwing flame at each other.
Right.
This is more, first of all, you probably won't feel the need to confront as much, and also to pick your moment. If you're going to
Okay.
confront somebody, don't do it in front of other people, because that tends to escalate things. And, take your time and pick the right moment for it. Um,
That's really sound advice anytime, but
yeah,
certainly if there's going to
anytime.
be some possibility for conflagration from that is
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
great
exactly.
advice.
Now, if you're an earth sign, if you're Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, what sign are you?
I'm Scorpio.
You're Scorpio. Okay. But if you're an earth sign, you'll find that this year is both challenging and invigorating in the face of any political or social chaos. They're going to, these signs will stand their ground and be steady foundations for the people around them. But I'm telling that those signs to kind of embrace their inner warrior. We can get into this flight and fight thing, but if you're organized as a warrior, if you're organized to fight, you're going to be much more comfortable than running away, probably,
Okay.
in this particular year. Water signs like Pisces, Cancers, and Scorpio will be the most adaptable this year. They can go with the flow, and yet they won't be swept away by the tides of political changes or other changes. They are among the most effective at maintaining the law and order and upholding principles both at work and their personal lives. That may not be true in other years, but it'll be true this year for them. Fire signs like Aries, Leo, Sagittarius will be the most powerful and effective in,
Yeah.
oh, I see a Taurus. I see a Taurus on
That's
this.
my travel buddy.
Yeah, I'm a Taurus too, so I can relate to that. Okay, so Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, the fire signs will be most powerful and effective in their personal lives, in their careers. They should remember that anger can be used for good or for evil. So you want to just kind of stick with righteous rage this year as much as you can. And it's best for them to concentrate on warming up relationships with friends and family with their sunny personalities and charm. You really do catch more flies, if that's your gig, with honey than vinegar. And so that warmth is going to be important with those people. They need to regulate the fire. And then we get into the air signs, Aquarius, Gemini, Libra, and they're the ones with the clearest view of matters this year. They're going to have a nice overview of things. So they'll be more intuitive, more clairvoyant than usual. They need to listen to that little voice inside them that tells them which paths to pursue and which to avoid. And unlike other zodiac signs, they'll be able to see the big picture in 2025 in a way that others can't. And this will guide them well, especially in money matters. When you talk
that would be so nice. Yeah.
When you talk about big picture thinking, think of the color purple. I often tell people politically I'm purple because I try to look at all aspects of something before choosing my course or advising anybody else.
It's always better to have the information.
Yes, and it's a good idea to have a broad. This can't be stressed enough. Have a broad spectrum of media that you listen to, right, left, down the middle, public radio, just a bunch of different sources, and always compare and contrast a story that you're hearing with sources that you trust. Because when you get into AI and people don't know what's real and what isn't, that's very dangerous ground. Now,
it seems that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Relevant to that, I was just going to comment that it seems that this is such a predetermined time for AI to be coming to the fore.
I know.
It's a little concerning.
It's suspicious.
It seems like the timing is sketch.
I agree.
What do you feel about that?
Well, who is it serving? Let's ask that question first. Who does AI serve? Who does it serve that we no longer teach civics in our schools? Who does that serve?
Or science.
Or science.
Or mathematics. I mean, it's
yeah. You always
all of
have
the
to
logical
ask,
things.
You have to ask who benefits from this. Who benefits from the fact that our kids don't know how the government works, don't know what they're entitled to as citizens. And invariably, it kind of goes back for me to the billionaire class.
Really, because I've always considered that to be more that the education standards have been dropped so much for so many years, and the people over education just seem to have been making a working class instead of a science or a philosophy or a
Mhm. Mhm.
thinking class.
Mhm.
And I mean, I have a child who's an educator. And so I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to insult educators. I just think that it became, for one thing, society kind of let discipline go by the wayside.
Yes.
And so if you cannot control a classroom, you can't teach a classroom.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the lack of discipline in our society, I think, is a big problem.
Oh, yes.
There's no self-discipline, there's no discipline allowed to maintain order.
Yeah.
There's no, teaching children how to regulate themselves,
Yeah. Yes.
because it is everybody's individual responsibility how they behave.
Well, yes,
And
and it does affect the whole class. If you've,
it affects the whole society.
mhm, mhm, absolutely. A lot of times when you get a lot of discipline problems in a classroom, everything is going to sink to the lowest denominator.
Absolutely, because the teacher has to handle the
Teacher has to
issues.
spend so much time dealing with hyperactivity,
Hmm.
and all sorts of other learning issues.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree with you completely. And it also has to do with the fact that people can't even seem to really discipline their kids in ways that they may want to,
Or themselves.
or themselves.
Self-discipline is out the window.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of that is, you have to look to see why this is happening and who would want it to happen,
Hmm.
you know?
Pretty
Um,
much people that want chaos.
oh, yes, exactly. We have a lot of nihilistic behavior out there. Absolutely. Um, people like, I can only speak for me, who
Sure.
came out of with parents in World War II and the Depression
Hmm.
and so forth. Okay. There was no, it was explained to me in no uncertain terms that you had to toe the line.
Yeah.
I don't know what would have become of me if I didn't toe the line, but with a colonel in the Air Force, I didn't want to find out.
Didn't want to
You
didn't
know,
want to push that envelope.
yeah, yeah, no, that was a scary, scary guy. And
Yeah.
I was not gonna push. I was not gonna be checking the electrical fences a lot to see where I could get out and stuff.
Yes.
But I don't know that kids nowadays even have that in a lot of households.
I think it's sketch. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, I
And that's
just,
just the breakdown of the family unit too.
mhm. Oh, absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
the people that are supposed to be teaching them that are so busy just surviving.
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you have children having children, and
Mhm.
and that's not new. That's
No,
not new. That's
no.
a couple of generations in now.
Mhm. Absolutely. But the dumbing down of Americans has been in the works for quite a while, I think.
Hmm.
When I look at all the movies that are out there now, they're all the stupid comic superhero junk. Thinking people can have trouble finding somewhere to go that is at all stimulating for them. Do you know? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, I do. I will say that I do like the Marvel movies because I think
Uh-huh.
people need heroes to
Oh,
look up to when
sure.
they don't
Oh,
have them in
sure.
their communities.
Oh, sure.
But I also think that, where's the red balloon, right?
Yes.
Where's really good poo movies? Where's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
something to make you think, something to make you appreciate.
Right. Right.
And and I have friends that make films. I'm not slamming the industry as a whole, but I think that we need to be taught to be creative in our thinking, and
Yes.
that means that we need to not have A plus B equals C means dollars. We need to
Mhm.
bring back indie films. We need to bring back
Yes.
independent
Yeah,
authors. We need to
absolutely.
not be, I'm with you on that.
Mhm,
I mean, for me, that kind of stuff, yeah, I never promised you a rose garden.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, outside of the box is an okay place to go,
mhm.
but we don't seem to have the creative courage
Right.
to do it.
Yeah.
That bottom line matters, baby. In that industry, I think it really, really does.
Oh, yeah. Of
So,
course. Of
and
course.
people aren't going to go see something that makes them have to think right now. We don't have that mindset.
No, it's too bad. It's too
Yeah.
bad because it's the only thing that really helps a brain continue to grow and evolve is having that learning almost all of your life.
Well, and if you don't have people, yeah, if your parents are so busy just trying to survive, or if your parents just are absent,
Yes.
which seems to be such a large part of society now,
Yeah.
you don't have people that understand that that's what saves you
Yes.
and
Yes.
that that's what will save your children.
Yes.
You
Absolutely.
think that's going to come back around?
Sometimes things have to go so far off the rails that it's clear to everyone that they have to get back on track. Do you know
Okay.
what I mean? And I'm afraid that
Are we
it's
there yet?
uh no, no, we're not.
Okay.
Uh-uh. I would love it if we were, but I'm seeing a big separation between kids who are so exceptional that they're in Spanish immersion classes at a very young age or French
Hmm.
immersion classes. And I'm seeing such a chasm between these two groups.
There is a huge one.
Yeah. And part of it is that you're sometimes dealing with parents who don't even know where the school is, okay, that their kid goes to every day.
Yeah.
And the other part is that you have parents who already have them doing, stuff from when they're really little, because they're guiding them into, uh, the expectation of, for instance, a tiger mom. Where my doctor is Middle Eastern. She not only is a novelist, but she's an MD. That expectation is there in that household. And it doesn't just come from a dad being scary,
Well,
like
it doesn't. I
paternal.
mean, people, one of one of my dearest families that I care about, we don't see each other anymore because the kids are grown and we just don't. But the the family, the father is Middle Eastern. It's from Pakistan.
Mhm.
And their work ethic, their love ethic, their family ethic, you know, they're a Muslim. And so when my daughter would go there, she would follow their rules. And when their daughter would come to stay with us, I would follow their rules,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because they knew that I wasn't going to damage her diet. I wasn't going to do something that they wouldn't approve of. My
Right.
daughter would go with them to make music in Atlanta. And after 9/11 or during 9/11, um, my friend was had to be hidden in the little Alabama courthouse he worked in
Oh, Jesus.
because
Mm.
he he met that criteria in appearance.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so he and I were talking a few weeks later, and he was like, thank you for loving me through this.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, and I do. I said, but, you know, I trust you with my daughter.
Mhm.
And someday you're going to have to tell me why people of this faith, because that was the only common denominator amongst them, yet think that this was an okay thing to do in my country
Yes.
because I don't understand. And you know, we have such love. How can that not, how can that not win?
Right.
And to this day, we love each other. Our children are grown. You know, we we live in different areas now, but if I see them, we're hugging. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter
Mhm.
where we are. It just happens. But that's what we need is that conversation. We
Mhm.
need people to stop with the anger. And I don't know that I see that being a thing. What about you?
Well, again, anger, that kind of anger often comes from ignorance. It just does. until you're, I was raised in the Philippines part of the time growing up because, we're on Air Force bases and things. My first nanny was a Filipino. Um, I've traveled a lot. You've traveled a lot. I noticed that people who are intolerant, we'll just put it that way, tend to have no desire. We just don't even have any desire to go to Europe, or do you know what I mean?
I
They just
do.
they don't. One of the things I've done for my nephews and nieces is that every Christmas we do a Christmas dinner from a different country.
Okay.
Because they need to know that Christmas is celebrated all over
Yeah.
the world in different ways, and I want them exposed to that, and so do their
Sure.
parents. You know, some of them have been lucky enough to travel abroad, some haven't, but this is a really big world.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I, I just think that I've noticed qualities about various people that I know are intolerant. And one
Mhm.
of them is that this complete lack of desire to travel or see any other country. There is no other country. The US is all there is. And there's something missing there. There's something wrong somehow. They tend to be the most prejudiced of my friends. And I try to have friends from both sides of the aisle on purpose.
Sure.
But
You
I
have
have
to be
many
open to all
friends.
the mindsets. I mean, you can't just lock people out,
Right, exactly.
or
But
you
but that
shouldn't.
but that
People do.
intolerance, it shows. First, they also show no interest in learning another language, at all. Um, and it's a narrow little thread that they're traveling down. Um, they also, by the way, tend to be much more prone to Alzheimer's disease in their older years because they don't flex their brain. They don't flex their thinking, you know?
Mhm.
Um, they wouldn't do what you did, and that is befriend somebody from an entirely different religion, entirely different culture, and trust your daughter with them, and vice versa. Um, and so there's something off there. They're not getting exposed to the stuff they need to be exposed to in order to not be in order to not prejudge people.
Well, I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I also know that my husband fully supports my travel addiction,
Oh, you
but
have a
he
travel addiction. Okay.
but he is just like, I don't really want to go. There's he runs a business, so there's time. But, he's like, there's so much in America that I still haven't seen yet. And, we'll get around to everything, but I want to see this and I want to see that. He had parents that traveled as they got older
Hmm.
around the country, and he just thought that was so cool. But yeah, but he has no problem with me going and flexing my wings out.
Good. Good.
But it's really an interesting thing because I have a daughter who's lived in all kinds of places in the States, and she was just from a little town outside of Birmingham, right? And then I have my other two children who are such homebodies, but they like to travel, but they are in, you know, they don't have much opportunity to right now.
Right.
So it's really, and it's just because of life, not because they don't dream of seeing it, just life.
Hmm.
But I do think that you have to be willing to have those conversations and you have to be willing to meet those people. And if you don't have a curiosity, you don't learn.
Yes.
You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, even if it's meeting new people, even if it's um, just, even in small towns, you can explore other cultures.
Yes.
You just have to be willing to do it and want to look for the opportunity.
Right.
And the people that you're talking about that are so rigid, they have a hard time with that.
Yes. Yeah. They do. And you have to kind of take it one case at a time. But I have really noticed that about some of my friends that they're very in their
Locked in.
own little
locked in.
pocket of stuff, and they're very intolerant of anybody else, and they don't even really understand my desire to be with anybody else.
Well, maybe they don't understand because of their lack of the moments, right? They don't really understand that they're missing so much.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my
And but
gosh.
I'm lucky because my friend group, I have two Canadians. I have people from lots of people from Ohio. Um, you know, and we all met because of Jimmy Buffett, which is a whole nother story. But we travel together.
Hmm.
We have always done girl trips together. We have always done stuff. People have different outlooks if they're from other places, and it helps you to have a more educated and mature one. You're absolutely right. People need to be exposed.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even think you're a good citizen of heaven if you're not tolerant to some extent. Do you know
I
what I
don't
mean?
know that you get there if you're not tolerant.
I probably not. Yeah, that those are they're just gonna probably get sent back to, and who wants to do that?
Have to come and start all over
Right.
again.
Yeah.
Start that journey.
Right. I mean, there's
But
a place
it's
in
really
heaven that is really just confined to working on people with addictions, and not purgatory, but I would call it a remedial level of heaven, because they're not there yet. They're still displaying addictive behaviors and very narrow-minded behaviors. They don't want to be exposed to knowing about other religions. I'm talking about pushing something on somebody. I just, maybe a familiarity with some other.
well, different people have different priorities, though.
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean, they would I I know people when I lived in Georgia that thought that if you weren't a horseman, then you just had no idea what was going on with. I mean,
Yes.
you know, we're
Mhm.
talking rodeo kind of people. It
Yep.
was very
There you
different,
go.
very
That's,
different.
yeah, a
But
lot of
that was
money.
their world, and that was what mattered to them.
Hmm. That's
And
their little world.
that wasn't my world.
No.
I was I was a writer. I wasn't very,
Yeah.
yeehaw. But
Well, should we talk about this year just kind of month by month a little bit?
would you please? I
Yeah,
would love that.
let's talk about that. Um, many Americans felt innervated by um, the inauguration of Donald Trump. They had a sense of having been weakened by it.
Oh,
But but I felt psychically that it's an illusion. That's an
mhm.
illusion, the sense of
Yeah.
I've been destroyed because this man is president. That's an illusion. I think in the next 12 months, we're going to see uh, that activity isn't going to be so much in the office of the presidency as we're going to see activity in Congress and courts on a lower level. I think that's where we're going to see the real action.
Well, that's
Um,
where that should be, though.
mhm,
That's
mhm.
closer to the
And the
actual
states, the
people.
individual states too. I mean, that's kind of how the Constitution was set up too.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and I think it's important to tell people who are demoralized about Trump winning that it's not what you feel that's important right now, it's what you do
Hmm.
that's important. Running around licking your wounds is not important. What
Okay.
you do is important. So you are going to see that common citizens are going to start to discover that, to the extent to which they have power, and they may never have had reason to look at that question before.
Okay.
Um, and I want to say on February 14th, because we talked about how snake years don't go well if people are feeling left out in the cold.
Hmm.
I think February 14th is not just a day this year anyway for spouses and sweethearts. I think it's really important to send Valentines to people you love in other ways. I think that inclusion's really important right now.
Okay.
When people are feeling crushed by an election or by anything else, and I mean crushed, you know. Um, it's important for them to know they're not alone for openers, and that other people care about them. And we don't do nearly enough of that. We
Well,
don't make
just on a
much
daily, we
more of
don't.
that in Europe than we do here. And
True.
it's the families units are so much more important. They sit down and have dinner together, no phones, you know. And I think that that's something that we have to keep in mind this particular year. Also, the month of March now, I'm seeing the temperance card, and it was interesting to notice that polls are showing that Americans have decided they're not going to drink as much in
I'm
2024.
seeing that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing
Um,
a lot of that coverage.
yeah. Yeah, it's really apropos that that card would come up in this spread, because I think they want to be more vigilant,
Okay.
and I think they want to take care of unfinished business and old problems. Now, in April, we're going to see. By the way, in places where spring is usually late to arrive, you're going to see an earlier spring arriving this year. So
Yay.
that's really music to a Minnesotan's ear.
I
Believe me.
know, right?
Yeah.
Carl's probably snooping dancing back there.
Yeah. In April, we're going to see a month of indecision. Do I do this or do that? But overall, psychically, it looks like the universe will be saying, just go for it. Now, you've been thinking
Okay.
about doing this thing, just go for it. If you feel it applies to your situation, just give it a whirl, give it a try. Um,
Cool.
this is a month, and this year will be loaded with questions of legality. We're going to see a lot of legality going to the lower courts, and so that's going to be interesting to see how when we have less federal government, how do the states handle things? How do they make their own decisions? And that's actually a point of growth in a lot of
It
ways.
is. And actually, the states are supposed to have a lot more power than what they've
Then
been
they do.
exercising. So that's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And probably the president should have a lot less power than they do. But that's another subject. Um, this is a month when we're gonna make the choice to be happy, or are we gonna be, the biggest choice we probably face is, are we gonna be happy, or are we gonna be pessimistic and full of dismay? That's a
Which way do you
choice.
think that's going to go?
I think we're gonna choose power and
Good.
joy. Yeah, I think we are. I think we're going to start
That's
to
what we
realize that
should.
when you say it's a government for the people, by the people, you can't take a walk on the back end of that. You
Mm-mm.
have to be involved, you know?
Well,
And
yeah, because if you're not involved, you don't have any room to fuss.
right, right. And George Washington didn't even want us to have two parties in this country. He didn't. He saw that as the end of us. you know,
Well, that's why he decided to be a president and not a king, also.
That's exactly right. He was not, and he wasn't wild about the party thing. But let's understand something. We all have more in common than we have not in common,
Absolutely, we do.
and the real enemy within that I'm hearing Trump talk about may be the billionaire class. It may be that the rest of the population that doesn't have 90% of the wealth is going to have to see what's happening, really wake up and see what's happening.
Well, it's going to be interesting because these same people were heroes 6 months ago
Mm-hmm.
to everyone.
Which people do you mean?
And,
Which people
you
do
know,
you mean?
the billionaires that,
Oh,
Meta and all these other people. And I just find it really funny that I think that Elon Musk has a very strange brain, but I
mm-hmm.
really find it fascinating with how he doesn't think like a normal human. And the things that make him interesting are also the things that make people the most crazy because he doesn't follow what would be societal norms.
Right.
And so I'm really thinking that if people will just back away from politics and remember we liked these people. Why did we like these people? Because they thought outside the box.
Yes.
And so let's get back to thinking outside the box and not letting politics and differences be what represent Americans. And it's so hard because there's so many fields and there's so many outlooks. And I guess I'm a Pollyanna, maybe Janice, but I think that we should not let emotion tear us apart when we're so strong if we stand together.
Exactly. Believe me, my concerns are very similar to your concerns. Especially the middle class in this country has really been eaten away at. And
It's been a hard time for the middle class.
yeah, oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if the billionaires were forced to pay their share of taxes, we'd certainly be sitting a lot better than we are right now.
Well, but they're the ones that take the risks too.
They take the risks, but it's become almost impossible for other people to start companies because of the cost of health care and the cost of insurance.
Well, that's where we should be addressing too.
That's the other thing.
Oh my
I mean, you
gosh.
might want to do a startup, but if you've got to pay for your insurance, even your own health insurance,
You're
it's
talking to a small business
nigh on to
owner.
impossible. Yeah,
It is.
I mean,
It's expensive and it's hard to get.
It's not promoting startup. It doesn't. Our system does not promote startups anymore.
You know what? I have taken you off course and you have months to go.
What was
Oh
that?
no. I said I've taken you off course and you have months to go.
Yeah. Well,
I'm so sorry.
that's right. We're going to see that May is a really positive month for us. And on a global level, we may see the resolution to the war in Ukraine.
That would be
We're
heaven.
funding these wars, so we have to be aware that these are going on. And then when we get into June, there are going to be some disruptions. It could be natural disasters that cause national and international air travel to be a problem. Most of it will get resolved by the end of June.
Good.
We get into July. Into July is a time when we start to really feel what has happened in the first few months of this year.
Okay.
Whether it's the president in 1 week got rid of so much stuff that but it may take us months to feel that, to understand. For instance, on Monday, January 20th, Trump signed a series of executive orders that impact roughly 24 million Americans in regard to being able to get health care. And these orders are part of a broader plan to reduce national health care, federal health care spending. Now, these changes are going to, oddly and ironically, going to affect people in red states more than blue. Texas, Florida, and Georgia, they're really going to feel that. That maybe, maybe they'll even go back to having pre-existing conditions exempt you from getting insurance. So, there could be some real.
That actually still happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it does to some extent. And then we talked about, let's see, August, you may see some uprisings amongst the population and an international conflict threatening. But I want you to know that overall, this is a very industrious year for Americans. We may have to step up and take the jobs of people who have been deported. Some of us will come out of retirement to do that. And the reversal of drug price reductions and healthcare coverage policies by this administration is still, as I said, will still be suppressing startups. You can't afford to run a new business. It doesn't matter if you've got wonderful ideas because you can't implement them. What else did I see? November is a month about unfinished business and cleaning up differences. Whenever you take the power away from the federal government and back to the states, you're going to have a cleanup period, a period where nobody knows who works where or what's going on, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
going to be our day of reckoning in November when it's the Ten
Okay.
of Swords. Ten of Swords is also a time when you could see a figurative or actual death of someone in command, someone high up in the government too. And then we get into Ace of Cups, and that symbolizes marriage. So this means that, again, we could see a peace accord happen amongst some warring country. And that's good because we want to get off this ride where we're funding all these foreign wars. I mean, I know the reasons for them. And I don't want to come off as completely anti what Trump's doing. It's very smart to have a presence in Greenland. It's very smart.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy when I first heard it until I started researching it.
Well, I mean, Greenland's not for sale. It's not like
it's not, but I mean, but it's very strategic.
But they very much welcome us. Denmark owns it, and they very much welcome us having more of a military presence.
Yeah, there. I mean, we already have a base there. They're very friendly to us.
Very strategic place, and it's strategic against the Chinese, against the Russians, and we got it. We can't be dummies here. We've got to protect ourselves. Absolutely. And so that's not as crazy as some of these ideas sound. They're not that
one sounded interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
No, that's a very strategic place. But we just kind of did the show backwards. I talked about my book and medium work and all of that up front. And now we're talking about the expectations. But people are going to discover the strength of their states and the strength of their people. And that maybe that's not a bad thing. It's scary.
Maybe it is scary, but maybe it will help us to remember why America is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what made us great initially.
Yep, absolutely. And
that's our people.
Right. Being more in touch with what the founding fathers were trying to set up.
Because it's been a great experiment so far.
It has. It has. And I don't want it to die. Nobody wants it to die. I don't think.
I know, right? But we just have to hang on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just hang on.
And we're going to have to be more involved. The people that didn't show up to vote, what was that about? There were so many people that just didn't vote at all.
And, it amazes me because I was a political science major.
Okay.
And we are so blessed to be able to run our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And people just get lazy.
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
And that's never a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to see more emphasis on people putting quality into their day-to-day lives. That's something you can control. Whether you're trying the new Mediterranean diet or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
There's a place, and Hygge too. Those are things that you do have control over. But we're all going to be testing that this year. Are we all comfortable in our skins, or are we ready to shed our skins and move into another area? That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though I dreaded working on the year of the snake, I found a lot of reasons to be sort of optimistic about it.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I enjoy so much about our conversations. And we need to do this more than once a year.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I'm just going to say that.
A quarterly checkup on the
I think so, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Kind of see where the predictions are quarterly.
And see if there's anything that's sticking out to you that maybe we can take a swing at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
We're out of time, but I just love when we get to have these conversations. I think that it's so refreshing, for one thing, because people get a chance to actually understand your process and how you put a lot of work into this.
Yeah, I work on it
you
for
do.
a couple weeks before I come to your show. Yeah.
I love that, and I appreciate it so much.
Yeah,
because I know you do.
My clients like reading it every year because it's a different take than the zodiac and other kinds of predictions too.
Yeah. And I am a firm believer in the Chinese calendar, so
yeah. Well,
just saying.
Yeah. It's
just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's some of this stuff wouldn't be around for hundreds of years if it wasn't as effective as we kind of know that things like feng shui. Feng shui has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe
And
thousands.
it's true.
Uh-huh.
Because if my house is out of line, everything is out of line.
Yeah, I know. And you wouldn't have even thought about it if you hadn't learned it. It'd been
Yeah,
open to learning it, right? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and Tom McNicholas says a couple of things. He absolutely said that he's been told he's very hard to read and he enjoyed listening to you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So, and I understand that Kansas City is going to the Super Bowl. So, who's I?
Again.
Again. Well,
Again.
I'm telling you, they have been playing like a bunch of demons out there.
They
They are so
have,
wide
man. They
open.
just own that field, you know?
They do. They own it every week.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, it's just been a joy as usual. We'll touch base again.
all right. Well, thank you so much because I love this. I love learning from you,
Thank you.
and I love hearing what you're seeing, and I pay attention because I love it.
Oh, that's
I
so
just
great.
do.
That's so great. Well,
And for go
enjoy
ahead.
the rest of this quarter or whatever, and make the most of 2025.
That's my plan. You know, I had a couple of tough ones a few years ago, so I
Mm.
love every day.
Yep.
And
Yep.
uh, for everyone listening, thank you so much. I know y'all enjoy Janice as much as I do. And we will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Take care. Good
Okay.
night.
Good night.